Okay, hi, my name is Mike Olson, and I'm going to talk to you today here about my piece, Noopiming, a choral music piece from 2011. What can I tell you? This is another of my fragment pieces, and which means it's constructed from many small fragments that I recorded discreetly and then constructed the piece later in the computer. Has some very interesting limitations and other things about it that I'm interested to talk about. I want to start with just the aesthetic underpinning for the piece, for what the idea was. This piece has as its aesthetic focus my own inexpressible feelings, and that I'm going to try to verbalize now, which I can't, about the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. It is a part of the world that I have spent a lot of time in. I started going there when I was a very, very young child with my father, and I continued throughout my whole life, throughout my adult life. I kept returning to that beautiful part of the world. It is located on the Canadian border in northern Minnesota. And like I say, I have this feeling about that area that it is hard to express, but it's not, it's loons. I mean, it is all of these things, but to me, there was always a feeling, particularly if you get back in there a ways, of a sort of a feeling of connection to some sort of primordial nature, something ancient. I mean, as beautiful and lovely as it is, it's a place that, if you don't have your wits about you, it could just kill you and leave no trace, because it's just, it makes you feel so small and so insignificant in this vast living rainforest of northern forest that is just alive and ancient and beautiful and wonderful. And like I said, I can't express it in words. I'm just totally failing here. So the music does that. So you listen to the music and you get this feeling, I hope. There are 8 singers, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, 2 on a part. And these are singers that I worked with who were at the time of the recording, were either current or former members of the Rose Ensemble. So a fantastic sort of ancient music group in Twin Cities here. They're just wonderful, beautiful sounding group. I wanted to work with them because they're great, but I knew it would be difficult, and possibly difficult for at least some of them, because they're used to doing this ancient music that's very rooted in tradition. And I'm a contemporary composer, and I don't write that way. In fact, this piece is not notated at all in a conventional sense, because of the way that I work.
And a lot of us in that group are kind of early choral musicians, and we're pretty used to being given kind of specific structures for things, and so improvisation comes into play for us in certain kinds of music that we do, but not in like a sort of contemporary or modern sense, really. And so I wasn't sure what that experience is going to be like for us, and if we were going to be able to really stretch ourselves to rise to the occasion.
So just to retouch on this fragment-based composition method, what I do is I record, in the case of this piece, I had a whole list of verbal instructions, 2 lists of verbal instructions. One that was all very specifically pitched instructions I had particular pitches, and I was going after certain chords. Actually, I had only 3 specific chords that were voiced. And then I selected them because I knew they could interlock in nice ways, plus some other specific pitch stuff. I had that list of instructions. I had another list of instructions that were totally inspecifically pitched instructions, right? They would not be given pitch information, other than, to keep them from being totally microtonally out of tune with everything else. The lovely and talented Paul Cantrell. I love that. All right.
I remember recording Noopiming in this beautiful church space. I was just there to give pitches to the singers, so I got to just watch the whole thing unfold almost as an audience member. And I remember it started off a bit awkwardly. All the singers were trying very hard to sing what was written on the page in front of them very correctly. But Mike's music is so expressive and gestural. In a way, the singers were almost being a bit too precise and too square. Things really started to cook when he started giving them little improv games, things like sing a syllable at random intervals not matching the person next to you. Then the singers really started to click and just produce all these wonderful sounds. And actually, some of those improv games are among the few bits of that session that I can still hear more or less unmodified in the finished piece. So much of it sounds just far more abstract and layered and complex than what we heard live that day. But those games came through, just a few of them, almost unmodified. She's hitting the microphone here.
And again, limitations. I mean, with this material, I should mention that I just finished a large project before this called Incidental, available on Henceforth Records. Beautiful, lovely, great. I really like that piece a lot. But it was 6 movements, 18 musicians, and literally thousands of musical fragments I ended up wrangling, and I could have probably made 5 more movements. I had so much material. So I was trying to not let myself fall into the trap of generating too much source material. I wanted to keep it limited. So a cappella only, 3 chords only, as far as specific chords, verbal instructions, and the title, Noopiming, is also the text. So all they ever sing are elements of that word. It would be hard-pressed to hear them sing the whole word. There's a spot, if you listen carefully, where it's there. It's all strung together as a word. But for the most part, they're just singing aspects of that word. Again, limitations. Stravinsky, the freedom of limits, and it was always true. And I forget once in a while. I forgot with Incidental, and I refocused with this one. Actually, at the end of the recording session, I thought, oh my God, we went out to eat, and I said, well, that was limited. I definitely felt like we were really limited. I was concerned that I was too limited, but obviously, the piece is over 20 minutes long as a single movement, and it's fine, and I had plenty to work with. And having that focus of those limitations is, of course, very helpful. And that's a lesson I have learned. How many times do I have to learn that lesson? I've learned it again with that piece. Okay, so the title, Noopiming, just so you know where that's coming from, that is an Ojibwe word, which translates as in the north, inland, in the woods. So completely appropriate, because it's up north, it's inland. Inland in the Minnesota sense, inland, all of Minnesota is inland, right? But inland as in inland from Lake Superior, it's like an inland sea. Inland from that, in the north, inland, and in the woods, very much so in the woods, in the boundary waters. So using an Ojibwe word, Noopiming, again, for me, it's just sort of another tie-in to the thing I wanted to get at with the primordial nature, pre-industrialization, pre-European, the way that the world was a long time ago, which I feel like you can get glimpses of for sure deep into the boundary waters. And it's part of that feeling that I kind of can't articulate, so I'm struggling with that. And just an anecdote here about the recording. This was recorded in the beautiful St. Mary's Chapel on the St. Paul Seminary campus. I had gone around and listened to many places, and I talked to a lot of singers about what are great spaces, to record in. I could just record them in a studio and everything's controlled, right? But I wanted it to be in an environment that sounded beautiful for the singers, to help them with their performance, so that they would be in an environment where as they're singing, they're hearing, and it's reinforcing them and making them feel inspired. And that's why I chose that space. And it is a beautiful sounding space, and I'm really glad we recorded there for a number of reasons. One interesting thing that happened is knowing that I wanted to do some very, very subtle and very, very quiet things. I knew that air handling would be an issue because it's not a studio. Air handling is always the thing you end up hearing when you're doing something quiet. So I wanted to make sure that the air handling would be shut off while we're recording. I arranged for this in advance. They had agreed to do that. Of course, we show up, the air handling's on, and there's no one there who could turn it off. So we were stuck with it. So right there, out the window go a bunch of ultra quiet things I wanted to do. I just didn't even try to do them. And you have to just go. So we went ahead and we recorded everything, and got a bunch of, the piece turned out great or whatever. I'm happy with it. But one interesting positive thing or a twist that happened as a result of having the air handling on is there are some places in the piece where it's just the man either singing a very low note or singing a low cluster of notes. And it's, again, this otherworldly, dark sort of sound. what I did on some of those is I created those fragments just by themselves, and then I made versions of those where I boosted the low frequencies, lower than them, that picked up this rumble from the air handling, and particularly in those low clusters and some of the really low held notes. It just added this weight to the sound that, if you're not, I almost shouldn't tell you this. I mean, if you just listened to it and you didn't know that, I think you just accept it as just this powerful, deep sound. It's actually frequencies that human beings cannot generate are happening to have these really low rumble sound. So that was kind of a neat, happy accident or whatever. Or ending up, I was so disappointed at the time. Oh, I can't do my super quiet stuff. But then I've got to fight this air handling, and I did have to. And I had to filter out some high things and so on. But then I could use that interesting rumble, and it just aesthetically just worked in those sections of the piece. It's just lovely, really cool effect. And it's just working with what you got, so I was really happy with that. Another aspect of this piece that I need to get into here is that there is a visual component for this piece, which is photography, the photography of Dale Robert Klaus. And it is, perfect for this.
I've always been drawn to that environment. I travel around the world. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I was in Hawaii. But there's something special about the unique beauty of the Boundary Waters area, the northern Minnesota, and I think it's hard, as a photographer. It's always been hard to kind of put your finger on what is it, and I think Mike captured it in his music, and it's something that's kind of intangible, mysterious, deep.
And I came upon the work of Dale Robert Klaus, and it had that sense of the primordial darkness. He didn't have a subject. He wouldn't. Sometimes he did, but he would just have the environment, the beauty of the environment, and it was just non-narrative in that sense, if you know what I mean. It didn't have a flower or a loon. I mean, he did some things like that, but he had. Those are exceptions. I mean, most of his stuff that I saw anyway, it was just really. It's the place. It's the environment. That's exactly what I needed, and it was perfect. And he was a great guy, and it was so nice to work with him. He was very cooperative, gave me all this stuff to work with. And along the way, I was building the video, and I was, working and structuring, building the images in against the music. And I would come to a point, I don't quite have a thing like this. And I could ask him, do you have some images that are kind of like this? And he could send me more stuff, and it was great. It was just such a testament to how great of a guy he is that at one point I was saying, it would just be great if we had some aerial. Actually, I was saying, there's one place you can go where it's almost like flying. I told him about this one trail you can go off of the Arrowhead Trail where you can, you end up on top of a cliff with these views. It's almost like aerial photography. He actually went there. I was not expecting that. He actually went there and hiked in there and took photographs. He didn't have good light that day, unfortunately, and so on, but it was, what a great guy. And not only did he go up and shoot from this cliff, he actually got arranged to go up and get aerial photography. He went up and flew around, shot aerial photography of the area. I'm sure that he can use in his own work, but he did it because he knew I was looking for that, and he didn't have it. Oh, what a great guy. And it really helped and made the piece better, having those images. So Dale Robert Klaus, great photographer of the Boundary Waters, and his work with this, with Noopiming, just created that synergy and took it to another level. So I'm really grateful that he participated with me on that. So if you're interested in getting a copy of the DVD of that, so you get the music and the visuals, just go to MikeOlsonMusic.com, go to the Compositions tab, scroll down to Noopiming, click on that. That'll get you, from there you'll find how to get to the DVD. And additionally there on the Noopiming page, there on MikeOlsonMusic.com, you'll have, of course, the full list of all the singers and links and so forth there. All very useful information if you want to know more about the details about this piece. Even has a little recording of me, from an outtake from me talking with Kim about that rumble effect. So that's some information about my piece, Noopiming. Thanks for taking a few minutes to listen to me. blather on here about it. It's a beautiful piece, and I really love it. Very immersive. And also, it's included on the 6 Projects CD LP on Nova Recordings. So I hope you get a chance to listen to the whole piece. It's over 20 minutes long, and it's gorgeous and otherworldly, and I can't express it in words. And that's why I make music, because I can't express myself with language. The things I can express myself with language are often in my music, and this is certainly an example of that. So there you go, Noopiming. God, I don't know if I can use any of that. Can I use that?